Welcome everyone to the weekend preview with Timeform. Not with Ben Fernley, not with me, but with this guy, Nick. He's normally sat in this seat, that's why we swap around, because the onus is on you to find the winners today. And the races that we're going to look at comprise of 2 at Newbury and 2 at Doncaster. We've got Cheltenham as well, but obviously it's a 24-hour declaration, so hard for us at this point to get stuck into that. But obviously check out the website and race passes for an up-to-date view from Timeform on those races. But we're going to look specifically at the St Simon Stakes at Newbury, along with the Horace Hill, the 2 group races there. Then an impossible 5-furlong handicap at Doncaster, followed by what we all want to call the Racing Post Trophy, but what we must call the Vertem Futurity Stakes. So, how do you feel about sitting there at this precise moment in time?
Well, as a man who hails from Lancashire, just swapping seats is a bit troubling for me because I don't like change. But yeah, it's exciting.
It's exciting, and so is the racing. Let's start with Newbury then, and the St Simon Stakes, St Simon Roland Stakes, as we call it at Timeform House. The 220 at Newbury, 11 runners is a bit of a bigger field than we used to for this particular Group 3. Who's the sort of shortlist, or who's the market principles that we should be looking at?
Well, the betting seems to revolve around one horse, really. Young Rascal at the moment. At the time of speaking on Thursday evening when we filmed this, he's 15-8 Young Rascal, and it just seems like a really ideal opportunity for him. He's been really interesting to follow this season. We haven't seen as much of him as we'd liked because, if you remember back in May, he won the Chester Vase and looked a real fancy for the Derby. Haven't seen him since until the other week when he won the Legacy Cup, and that really earmarked him as a horse who will go on from that, probably over further in time. But he looks a really nice 3-year-old, and I mean, I was looking at how much he's up for grabs in this. It's £34,000 to the winner. It just looks a really good opportunity for him to pick up some prize money before next year.
And there's that feeling that it's a stepping stone for him to next year as well, because you mentioned that Newbury win on his comeback from a summer absence. I think the second for Simcox has won that graded race over in America as well. So it looks strong form. He looks a strong horse, especially for next year. And it's a simple case of, yeah, he's got the best form. He's probably got the most potential. So at least you can reason the why he's 15-8. Anything else for that, or should we move on to the Horace Hill?
We could quickly mention a few of the ones up against him. Weekender's second in the betting at the moment. Frankel Colt, he's been largely consistent. He's threatened quite a few times when winning and running well in handicaps to be a group horse, but every time he's running it, he's fallen a bit short. So 7-2 is probably not the best sort of price for him, considering he's shown his limitations in the past. And Communique's another one as well. Communique, he's about 11-2 at the moment. He's got about £4 to find on our ratings with Young Rascal. And he's a real typical Mark Johnson horse in that he's very busy, he's very genuine. Generally has been running from the front of late. We'll give it a good go, but I do think that they're all a lot more exposed in this field than Young Rascal, and I'd be disappointed if he doesn't win, really. Yeah,
that's probably the salient point with him. Not just a horse for Saturday, but a horse as a 4-year-old to look forward to in 2019, and plenty to look forward to in 2019 with the 2-year-olds, of course, at the top end. We've got 4 horses rated over 120 with Timeform. Real strength in depth amongst this year's 2-year-olds, and we're going to talk about the 2-year-olds for both the Vertem Futurity later on, but we'll start with the Horace Hill. And as you'd expect, this isn't the Premier League of 2-year-olds, it's more like Championship standard, and it's quite an open Group 2. If it is a Group 2 to Group 3, that's why it's such an open Group 2, because it's in fact a Group 3. But we've got an unusual horse at the top of the market in the shape of Chairman of the Board.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see him so short as well. He's 2-1 at the minute, and this is on Thursday night, so the betting is still only really getting to grips with the race at the moment. And I mean, it's easy to see why he's so short, because he absolutely hosed up on his debut. He was well backed as well when doing so at Goodwood. Won by 10 lengths, I think. He represents the Mick Shannon yard, who are well known for being very good with 2-year-olds in their yard. And yeah, the signs are ominous, but I don't know whether I would be taking 2-1 about a horse like this, considering that he's probably going to be sure to come Saturday. And it's difficult to assess from just one run how good he is. He could be the next Frankel, but you know, at the same time, it's very short considering we've got plenty in here that are also open to improvement.
Yeah, we sort of used to this scenario more in the Racing Post Trophy or the Futurity Stakes as it is now, where Aidan O'Brien will throw in a lighter raced horse up against group performers. It goes off 2-1 or shorter, and we're left with egg on our face because we say, well, that's got the potential rather than its proven form. But Aidan knows a bit about racing and he tends to win that particular argument. But it is different here and unusual to see a Mick Shannon 2-year-old quite so short, being so light on experience. And a race like this is going to be a shock to his system. So who amongst the rest has raced more and still looks promising?
I think the best place really to start is with Fanor because he's Timeform top rated and he's had a few more runs under his belt. He's had 5 starts now and he looks a useful 2-year-old. His chance is probably reflected in his price in that he's about 15-2, which suggests that whilst he is open to improving himself, there is the feeling that a few might improve past him because he had a nursery start last time and was second, looked open to winning off the mark he was on, but conceded first run that day. And was slightly unlucky, but you probably think that something would improve past him. So I would pass him over, I think, at 15-2.
Which horse grabs your eye just at this stage looking at the betting?
Well, I really like the name Dirty Rascal, but that's no way to ever approach a race by backing by name, unless you're going for the Grand National, maybe. My nan's got an astounding record in the Grand National. And a lad I went to uni with as well. I think he managed to pick Mon Mon at 100-1 because he had a French exam. And then Pinot de Rey because he was drinking it, and incredible. But I think he's really likeable. He's very good from the front, but I also think he's vulnerable to an improver. And at the prices, I'd probably take a risk on Al Mufti at about 12-1. I don't think he's shown as much as some of the others, but he's a bit of a sporting pick for powerful connections. He's had 3 starts so far, and he seems to be the sort who's learning on the job. It was interesting that he was sent off 3-1. He was well backed in a valuable conditions race on his debut, and then he ran okay in that, and then disappointed next time out at Newcastle when he was backed off the board. I think he was sent off about 6-4. But he got off the mark last time at Kempton, won really well that day, and looks like the sort who's going to carry on improving. He's in excellent hands with Hugo Palmer, and he's got the red hot man of the moment, Jason Watson, booked on board as well. So in a race where it's difficult to sort of gauge where these are at, I'm more than happy to take one at a slightly bigger price.
Yeah, that's a good policy. And keep an eye on Al Furat River, who runs in the first race at Doncaster on Friday, because Al Mufti beat that horse at Kempton that day. That horse, Al Furat River, has since won himself. But if he goes in again at Doncaster on Friday, then Al Mufti will be a shorter price, given the strength and the boost that will give him. Let's go from that to something altogether different, and the 5 furlong handicap at Doncaster, 3:25 it's at on Saturday, and it's a lot of the usual suspects. I suppose that consistency is a really precious commodity in races like this, and you have to tip your hat to Tarbouche because this horse in his last 5 races has won 3 and finished second the last twice.
Yeah, it's not difficult to see why he's favourite really, because he's had a brilliant campaign, as you say, complete the hat-trick. Let's follow that up with 2 really solid runs to finish second, and just looks like the type, he's made himself into a smart sprinter, the type who could possibly give it a really good go in Pattern Company as well. So he's a really solid candidate, but he's carrying top weight in here. He's drawn high as well, when statistically it favours those drawn low here. So I'd probably go for something else, I think, in this.
And it wouldn't be a sprint in the north if Paul Midgley didn't have more than one runner in it. He's got Tarbouche, but he's also got Line of Reason, and he is a regular in these sort of races.
Yeah, he's one I like as well. I've sort of attacked this race thinking that if you asked me to pick out a race for me that would be the least favourite of mine to have a look at, it would be a big furlong, a big handicap sprint with over 20 runners at the end of the season when they've all had long campaigns. It becomes really tricky to try and pick one out, but I've sort of gone in on the angle that it's going to be an extreme pace, and those that drawn low are favoured. Line of Reason is more of a hold-up performer. He's drawn low as well, drawn in stall 3. But he used to be a smart performer. He's getting on a bit now. He's 8, but he still does have the ability. He's been showing it, and he's been okay so far this campaign. And he's also got a certain man on board in the form of Jamie Spencer, the perfect partner to go fast and late. If you're going to need a lot of luck, you always do him running in these sorts of races, but if it does open up for him, he's in the ideal draw, and if the pace collapses with an extreme sort of setting, he could be one of the ones to come quickly. Yeah. And he's 28 to 1 as well.
I think it's the first time that Spencer's ridden him, certainly he's for a long time, and he's just the sort of match made in heaven, isn't it? The strong travelling, hold-up horse, Line of Reason, and Jamie Spencer. Paul Midgley's got 2. Michael Dodds has got 2. And these 2 have been hunting in pairs, more or less, throughout the season. Holmeswood and Dakota Gold. Both being regulars, both being winning. But which one do you like out of those 2 in particular for Saturday's scenario?
Yeah, it's Holmeswood for me, who is named after, he's one of the David Armstrong horses, and he's named after a local coach firm.
Oh,
he used to take me to school, Holmeswood coaches, he's a real familiar name in this scene as well, not just the coach scene.
The coach scene.
Yeah, big player in the coach scene. And he's had a really solid campaign as well. He was slightly disappointing at Ascot last time, but he's proven in softer conditions. Whether it comes soft is, well, it's up to the weather really. Yeah. Did you say it was good to soft?
Good to soft right now, yeah.
So he's proven on all surfaces. It's been a year now since his last won, but he's another one who is going to be playing his cards later rather than sooner in this sort of race. He's drawn in 2 as well, drawn low again. So he's got Line of Reason for company. He looks to be on a reasonable mark as well, considering what he's shown in the past, 91. You're going to need a lot of luck to win this kind of contest with 22 runners, and they're just 2 sporting picks in something that I wouldn't be going anywhere near personally.
So you're looking for the far side of the track, which is where the low numbers are, and you're looking for a strong pace there, and one or both of Holmeswood and Line of Reason to be slicing through the field at the finish. Let's move on to firmer ground than a big field sprint handicap, which is a Group 1 contest. And obviously it is a Group 1 for 2-year-olds. We've mentioned the quality of the 2-year-olds this year in particular. This, however, is slightly different in that it's a Group 1 contest without as yet a proven Group 1 performer. We're dealing in lower down the ratings, certainly for this Vertem Futurity, but the whole point of this race is in the title, the Futurity. We're looking towards the future, and any one of several of these horses could conceivably develop into a Derby horse. Aidan O'Brien's won it 8 times. He's the man again to concentrate on because he runs several in the Futurity.
Yeah, I wrote the preview for this on the website on Tuesday, and at that point he had 8 in the race. So, I mean, it centred more around Aidan O'Brien than usual, really, because it became a case of trying to work out which ones were going to come here. And he's got a few smart 2-year-olds at the minute. Japan and Norway and Broome were all pulled out of this. Yeah. And it's left one who was supplemented in the form of Magna Grecia, who looks a typical sort of Ballydoyle profile. He'd been supplemented, and he was an emphatic winner on debut, and on his second start he was second in a Group 3 in the Autumn Stakes. He only just went down as well at Newmarket last time. It was on the telly. To Persian King, who has come over from France from the Farber Yard. He was really well backed. He was 5 to 2 earlier in the week. It's not a surprise that his price has collapsed. It's now about 6 to 4, 13 to 8 at the time of recording. He just looks the typical sort of profile. He's going to get a good toe into the race. You imagine Western Australia's here to do the donkey work in front. So it doesn't look the most glamorous of Futurity trophies that we've been treated to in recent years, because it turned into a real brilliant match last year between Saxon Warrior and Roaring Lion, and it looks easier this time around, and he looks the ideal candidate, I think, to win it.
Yeah, really interesting, I think, and significant that this horse has been parachuted in. I think it tells you that A, he's ahead of schedule, and B, he's not too hopeful about those who are already engaged in the field. So yeah, really unusual set of circumstances that horse is arriving today, but significant in itself. Just very briefly, if there was 1 or 2 in there to make a leap in form, who might make a jump as far as this Group 1 is concerned?
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple quickly to mention. I mean, you've got to pay attention to whatever Andrea Razzani's riding, because
Mr. Doncaster,
he's won 4 of the past 5 renewals of this, and he's riding a really unexposed one in the form of the elegantly named Rakib Al Hawa, which is designed to trip me up, I think, in terms of pronunciation. He's 1 from 1 so far. He won on debut in a minor race. It's worth noting he was the first debutant to do so in that race for about 10 years. But it was only useful form that he showed, so he's going to need more, especially against Magna Grecia, who's already proven himself in Greek company. on the form, Phoenix of Spain's only got £1 to find, and he's run well. He's got proven Doncaster form as well. If you remember, he was trailing behind Too Darn Hot in the Champagne Stakes. On the figures, that wasn't a bad run, but he's probably got less scope for improvement than some of the others in this field. So the biggest danger could be Turgenev, who was all over social media a few weeks ago. He absolutely hosed up at Newcastle on the all-weather. He followed that up in minor company at Newmarket, but it's a really big step up in class. So it's another sort of, you look at these runners and think, how much have they achieved? It's difficult to gauge because he's now jumping into Group 1 company. So strictly on the figures, he's got to find about £8 with Magna Grecia, but he could be anything. And if Circus Maximus wasn't an Aidan O'Brien runner, you'd think you'd probably respect him or give him more of a chance. I know that one of O'Brien's many tricks is for his second and third strings to win these kinds of races, but the fact that Magna Grecia's in here and has been supplemented suggests that he's very much the first choice for all that he's open to improvement. So I do think they're going to have to go some way to beat him. Yeah,
it's a good summary, I think. Pretty safe bet, Magna Grecia, the form, the potential, and the fact that he's been supplemented, all really significant. So that's our wrap-up for the weekend preview. Someone will be back next week. Oh, it's the Breeders' Cup, innit? I'll be back doing Facebook Live with the Breeders' Cup specifically in mind next week. So have a good weekend, whatever you're betting on.